Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. And this is our Tube Talk episode. So we're going to talk about some of the latest TV episodes, review them, talk about some new shows coming out, and maybe some shows that we're just now getting a chance to actually watch.
I disagree, Matt.
Okay, disagree all you want, Joel.
We should talk about past shows.
Okay, past shows only. Let's talk about MASH.
Yes! Do
and
it!
Friends.
And Alf.
And Seinfeld. And Step by Step. Okay.
Step by step, day by... Sorry, couldn't help it.
And with me, I have Mr. Joel Cunningham.
Hello. How you doing, Matt?
Doing awesome. How are you?
Doing good. My neck's sore.
Why is your neck
Would you
sore?
like to come massage it?
No.
Maybe between
You can stay on your side of the table.
Okay. Yeah, I worked out. That's my first time ever, yeah.
Ever?
My first time in a while, though. It's been like 6 months. I've been super busy, and I haven't had a chance, and I went. But I bought this membership to, what's the place? UFit, which I did almost out of principle. This was the...
Sounds like a phone app.
I'm going to go down this path.
Okay.
But I'm going to try not to go too far down this path.
Okay.
So I went to, and I will not mention the gym name by name, but it was a gym.
Globo Gym?
Well, you know.
Average Joe's.
It's famous in the LA area.
Okay.
How about that?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I went to this gym just saying like, hey guys, hey Jim, I want to get into membership of the gym, right? Yeah. Just kidding. And the guy was like talking to me about the deals they had going on, and I told him that they were doing one at UFit. So they had a $90 deal for it was like a year. And I was like, bro, they got a great deal here. What are you offering here? And he's like, yeah, well, we don't do that kind of stuff here. You see, we're like the Mercedes. And if you want to drive a Honda, you can go to the UFit.
And you went to Jersey for this one.
Yeah. So I'm driving a Honda. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. So I kind of did that out of principle. I was like, if you're going to tell me that I, you know, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm at UFit. And it's great.
Sounds like an app where you just do all the workouts and they send you pictures of what to do.
UFit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, like you're gonna fit in these
nice.
clothes
it's
by the
pretty
time
nice.
you're done. Okay.
It's like a neighborhood gym.
All right.
Versus the LA where
friendly
like
neighborhood gym.
Their designer workout clothes and everything. Yeah.
Nice.
Which is me.
Well, hey, let's talk about TV.
Hey, let's do that. Awesome. Let's go.
I like that though. It's good to know.
We got some good stuff to talk about on TV too.
We
We've got
do.
a lot of shows that are like restarting and getting into good stuff. So I'm excited.
Listen,
to talk
we
about
put in some serious work this week,
did.
guys. Joel did put a lot. He put a lot of work in. I did quite a bit. I probably watched a whole season of a show.
Yeah.
He watched a whole season of a show, but definitely not as good as the one that I watched.
I'm not mad, but
He's mad.
I am owed reparations.
I'll get the next one.
Okay, fair enough. You buy the next gift card for the content.
Let's start off what I'm really excited to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start off with Better Call Saul.
Yay, it's a great show.
I'm officially caught up. And
Awesome.
so are you.
I am.
And we talked about this last week, and I just watched like one episode of season 2.
Yeah, and there's a new episode coming out
tonight
for us.
Yes.
We'll release this, and so I'm really excited to catch that because the last one ends on, like they all end on a bit of a cliffhanger type thing, but this one in particular ended on a very strong cliffhanger where we're kind of left wondering, is Saul in like big trouble?
Right.
You know?
So this last one.
Did he really mess himself up there?
And I hate talking about like, because what AMC will do is they'll preview the next episode.
Yeah. Which Saul's Jimmy, by the way, at this point.
Right. So Jimmy McGill.
Yeah.
Slippin' Jimmy.
Slippin'
And he, okay, so at this one, the big cliffhanger is he finds out that, again, we spoil things on the Tube Talk.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning. If you don't want to know about Better Call Saul, watch it because it's probably my favorite TV show on TV at this moment.
It's a good one.
At this moment, he walks in all furious. He finds out that his brother recorded him.
His brother Chuck has recorded his confession
that he doctored documents.
That he kind of coerced him into in a way because he was pretending to be much more desperately in need of...
And Kim's like, hey, we can figure this out. And then you're like, oh, weird. Jimmy's being all like weird and like calm about this.
Yeah.
And then the tape thing makes him explode. And he goes over to Chuck's and he basically kicks in the door.
Yes.
And then like tears a bunch of stuff up. And then there's people that witness him like, breaking in. And
which he went there. So there are people that witness him. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And they basically now have what I'm guessing is enough to show that he's potentially tampering with evidence or destruction of evidence or obstruction of justice, potentially the physical threat that he made to his
breaking and entering.
There's a number of different things that they could potentially get him in trouble for.
Oh, yeah.
From his activity right at that moment. Although, I mean, I don't think, obviously he doesn't get disbarred unless he like changes his identity because, we have the next Breaking Bad, and he's
Right.
a lawyer in that. So who knows what's going to happen? But I really was. I mean, you always get this moment with these types of shows by Vince where it's like you're waiting for somebody to break, and you're waiting for it to break, and you're waiting for it, and you're waiting. Like I personally, like this entire last couple seasons have been like waiting for Jimmy to like just let his brother have it.
Yeah.
His
His brother is terrible.
See, that was the funny thing. We talked about this in the last recording. I was starting to kind of feel better for.
I never did. I don't know what you were talking about.
Well,
so.
I started to feel for his brother around the time where he talked about like how he took some money from his family.
Right.
And, there was just some aspects of like, when he was starting to explain why he prevented his brother from becoming a lawyer at the firm instead of just like this blanket thing that he didn't do. Like, and he's explaining that like, he's a fraudster. He's done these things. I've had to bail him out of jail. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I started to feel more bad for him. Not that I agreed with what he did, but I started to kind of see his side of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And obviously there was like some brotherly contention and stuff like that. But then by the end of this season so far, I can't stand the guy. I'm back to really not standing him, but like
He's
Jimmy let
terrible.
him have it.
Yeah.
And he went there. He was like, your wife left you because of blah, and you've got these stupid
I'm going to burn this house down.
I was like, nail him, get him, Jimmy, get him. It was like amazing. So,
I know.
And then the other side, and you talked about this, I mean, the two sides of the coin is you kind of have, it's slowly slipping more into this suspenseful, actiony type, almost Breaking Bad show with Mike.
Yeah, which is excellent.
Yeah, and so you said there's like two sides.
So to catch up a little bit, and I want to talk about it because the show is deserving of being talked about. It's just really, really good. It starts off, season 1 starts off, it's its own thing, and it still is its own thing.
Yeah.
But it's slowly kind of starting to connect a little bit to
More
Breaking
and more.
Bad,
Yep.
which makes sense. First of all, let me say this is the best prequel or spin-off series I've ever seen.
Yes.
I would give it that award immediately. And I think the fact that Vince Gilligan has been he hasn't just created it and then let it go to go do other projects. He's on board with it and he's still working on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just genius on his end. And this show, it's more of that drama comedy, but like you said, it's starting to make its way to becoming more intense, like Breaking Bad was, and I think a lot of that is Mike. Is stuff that's happening with Mike. You have like two main characters, really, Jimmy or Saul, he's the main character, but Mike is like the other main character, and you follow his story and why he's doing what he's doing, why he's trying to make the money to help his family and all of those things, and how he kind of gets in with, bad people.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense, and
Right.
it's perfect. It's all the action elements is Mike stuff.
Right.
And it's done brilliantly, and there's some criticisms out there of people who are saying, there's all these Breaking Bad characters, there's like little cameos.
Right. We had a huge one and a smaller one. So you had Francesca, who's kind of like his receptionist from Breaking Bad.
Right.
Which is hilarious to me.
That whole scene was hilarious. He's like, oh, mention Cracker Barrel.
Yeah. I thought that was great. And it was great in a way because it's like... It was a cool tie-in. I don't know. Just seeing her in the way he was like, no, I just have a feeling about her. And It's kind of a funny thing because that fits his character.
Yeah.
But it also fits because of Breaking Bad and the fact that she's still going to be there for
I know,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're just getting closer because these events are just going to lead right up to Breaking Bad.
And then the other big one, which we can talk more about once you're done, but Gus.
Yeah, Gus.
Which is huge. And he made such an amazing appearance to me because it was perfect in a way. That's exactly what you expect of Gus, which is kind of like, not assuming, very friendly, but then he's got that like look. Those the moments where he just
evil.
where it just turns like blank and it's like crud.
It reminds you of that scene where he walks down without saying a word and just cuts that dude in the neck.
Absolutely.
In the Breaking Bad.
Right, and exactly. And the thing that's so awesome about Gus in Breaking Bad is that he plays such a good antagonist for. Can't think of their names right now.
Walter White and Jesse.
Walt, yeah, but I mean, he plays such a good nemesis in a sense because he is of equal intelligence, and he's not like a lot of the people up to that point in the show that Walt had faced off against were kind of idiots.
Yeah, he's smart. He's brilliant,
and they were more just like they had a lot of violence.
Very careful, calculated.
But Gus is calculating. He's careful, and so he was such an amazing nemesis, and you see that in his character in this episode, the way that he's kind of almost in a way playing with Mike, and sort of testing Mike, and it's kind of building.
And it wasn't cheesy in how he was introduced. It makes sense because Mike eventually works for him, and that's like one of the things that we learn about Mike when we first see him in Breaking Bad is he works for Gus.
Right, and the big complaint that I'm seeing a lot of on this episode was that it was a little slow. But it takes episodes where they're building tension to get to the moments where you have like Jimmy in this episode exploding and freaking out, and that it was played so well because it would have been really crazy and ridiculous if they were both having these insane things going on. But I'm fine with them building Mike's story up while letting Jimmy have sort of the intense emotion and the tense connection there with his brother. And that was it left it in such a place that I'm like, I'm really wondering where things are going. I think one of the aspects as well about the show that I love is they're tying in what's happening not just in Breaking Bad, but they're tying in what's happening after Breaking Bad.
I love
and
it.
Talking about where Jimmy ends up or Saul ends up, working
Gene.
at the Cinnabon. Yeah, as Gene. But then they're also at times giving you some of his backstory and showing him as a kid and showing him, when he's getting in trouble with the law and everything. And I thought recently where they showed him actually as a kid and you saw his dad getting taken advantage of.
And he knew it was a grifter.
And he knew that his dad was getting taken advantage of. It just makes more sense because he's like, well, I don't want to be like that.
Right.
So it just makes sense why he would have more or less kind of gone down that road.
Right.
It showed some tendencies towards that activity.
And I like
already,
that it's not like Breaking Bad where your character is just getting more and more evil. He's good at heart. He makes a lot of dumb decisions.
Right.
And does things for gain. He makes decisions without thinking of the repercussions of it.
Right. He's selfish, but he's not psychopathic.
Right.
Whereas Walt was in a way psychopathic, but I would also say that a lot of that was on the basis of he was a very intelligent guy that was doing some really crazy stuff because he thought he was dying.
Yeah.
And so he kind of got pushed into this Breaking Bad mode.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm not saying that Saul would ever go down that road either, but I think it's amazing the parallels that we're starting to see where it's like a minor version of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
It's like Saul Goodman's story of Breaking Bad.
Right.
Yeah. It's like his breaking in a way.
Yeah. It's like Breaking kind of bad.
Breaking kind of bad. So yeah.
But man, I love this show. I'm impressed that it's 3 seasons in and it's still good.
Yeah. So let's talk
really
about
good.
this episode in particular. What's your rating for like this episode in particular?
This latest episode, I loved it. I mean, it's 9. I loved it.
Yeah. I'd probably give it like a 9.2, 9.3 out of 10. I mean, yeah, I think Mike's the big thing was kind of Mike's role in it was a little slow. But,
he does so much without saying hardly anything.
Yeah, but like even remember that scene where Jimmy's like with the tape, and his brother had like told him to like roll it, and you're just like, oh, that's so just like cool how they tied those things together because you don't even think that's going to be tied in.
And then he rips it off and it's all jagged.
Yeah, and you see it's all jagged. I mean, just little things that they tie in with the show.
Really good.
Yeah, so good. I'm super excited for tonight's episode.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna hopefully we'll keep up on this. We'll talk about it every week.
Yeah, this is a show we'll definitely be keeping up on for the coming episodes.
One of the best ones out there right now. Yep. Another show that I'm actually kind of glad it's over and that we can kind of put it out of its misery here and see if it gets renewed for next season is 24 Legacy. Mm-hmm. We started talking about this, but I stopped talking about it because it was frustrating. Thought I'd give it the whole season to get better, and it didn't. So let's just talk about that. The 24
Why
Legacy.
did it not get better?
It didn't get better. It's 24 light. Like it felt kind of like it was being 24, but it was lazy. I felt like it was lazy. It just took a bunch of plot points that we had from all the other 24 seasons, and it couldn't make it its own. And it did all those copycat plot elements. Not as good. And there weren't enough characters to care for. You like the main character.
Right.
And even though you like the main character, his name's Eric Carter, and he Corey Hawkins plays him, and you like him. You like him enough, but you weren't as like what's the word? You just weren't on board with him as much as you would say like a Jack Bauer.
You weren't as connected to his journey or his character, I guess.
Right.
It's frustrating. I mean, because 24 is such a classic show for a lot of people. It is some people loved 24.
Yeah.
And absolutely just they couldn't get enough of that show.
I was one of those people.
I wasn't, but even as a person that's not a fan of it, I know that if they're going to bring a show like this back, they're going to have to bring something new to the table. Yeah. You can't just literally regurgitate some of the elements from prior show in a not good way. It's like you have to bring something new and dynamic to the table, and it can't just be cast change.
There was a lot of okay, and here's another frustrating. There's a lot of like soap opera drama.
Yeah.
Like between him and his wife, between his brother and his wife, like this weird like love triangle. That was pointless. So pointless. And also with one of the analysts and his ex, and it was just kind of like I know, it was just like a lot of pointless things. They're trying to like give you character development as it's happening, but it felt forced and like it didn't belong.
Yeah.
And I would say Miranda Otto is in this. She did a really good job. I like Jimmy Smits, even Teddy Sears, who I can't think of the name in the show, but he it was just one of those.
Yeah.
Like he had some really good supporting characters, but
Yeah.
the show didn't justify having all that talent and giving you a good story.
How did it do in this aspect? Because I watched the first episode.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really kept me from gauging in a deeper way is it didn't in deeper way. Yeah. Well, the show didn't feel deep. It didn't feel like there was a big story that they were kind of just starting to break into, like the tip of the iceberg type thing.
Yeah.
Was that there with the original 24 where it felt like you're kind of going into this much bigger type world, or was it still more just driven by Jack Bauer?
It was driven by Jack Bauer and the people at his agency at CTU.
Right.
And here's the thing, 24 as it was 24 episodes.
Yeah.
You got a lot of development whether you wanted to or not. It's a lot of TV.
Yeah.
And 24 Legacy is only 12 episodes, and they said if they continue, it's only going to be 12 episodes at a time. So I don't know why they call it 24 Legacy just in general. They should just call it 12.
Yeah.
But they did this thing at the very end where, first of all, the end was a little bit maddening. The penultimate episode, you had the director of CTU basically subdue a guy by putting him in a chokehold in an office that people could see and kind of grabbing him real quick and falling to the ground so people couldn't see him. So hopefully nobody saw him like chokehold this dude.
Which is very realistic.
Right. And so he did it. And then you don't see the ramifications of that.
Oh, dear.
The next episode is like he's still in charge. The guy did the chokehold on him. And like, I don't know if he was just out of commission the whole time. Like he was passed out that whole time. You don't see the ramifications of him. In the old 24, Jack did stuff like that. And the guy would wake up later and then like be all mad, like and going after Jack to do that. This one, they didn't talk about that at all. And what they did for the 24 part is so it started at noon and ended at midnight, right? So what they did was at like 11:47 on the clock at PM, they like when they fast forwarded the clock 12 hours to like be 24 hours.
What?
Yeah, I was like, you can't do that. I don't know.
Cheating.
It just felt I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I did like how it kind of wrapped up a little bit, but as a whole, the story wasn't effective. And to your point, the one story that they tried to kind of pull at your heartstrings was the relationship between Eric and his wife, and it didn't.
The reason I'm saying that is just because when I watched the episode, it felt like there was really only one plot line that felt significant enough to kind of continue to the next episode, which was like him trying to get the money back or whatever it was. But it felt like that could get wrapped up in like 5-10 minutes in the next episode. And so, I mean, yeah, there was some drama with his wife, but it literally felt like everything could have gotten wrapped up within one episode. Whereas I would expect with the show that's going to go like a full day of crazy stuff, that there's got to be some much bigger picture of things happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It just didn't feel that way. And that's why I was asking like if it was like that or not.
They tried to do that, but it felt like it was tacked on at the end. Like in the 7th or 8th episode in, they like were like, oh, there's the bad guy that I thought was the main bad guy isn't really the main bad guy.
Yeah, because there's shows out there though. I mean, we watch Flash.
Yeah.
And that show for the most part is a very self-contained type. I mean, especially recently, there have been like episodes that have tied very strongly into the episode.
You get like
after
one main bad
like
guy and then like a bad guy of the week.
Right. But for the most part, the show is kind of like each episode was self-contained.
Yep.
And this doesn't feel like a show that needs to be self-contained. It feels like a show that's telling a long story. And if that's the case, you need to bring big stakes and big things happening that you're slowly revealing.
Another thing that was frustrating in the other 24, the original 24 did this a little bit. They took some liberties with the time. So for example, it's and I got to commend people that try and write for the show just in general, because they have to be conscientious. It's a lot. It's in live, like it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
So, you know, they do really good in the first few seasons of the original 24, because they're like, all right, it takes 30 minutes to drive from here to here, so we can't be on that character for 30 minutes because
they do something.
So they go to
else,
another characters.
Yeah.
And so a lot of time that's a writing thing that I have to do. But they took someone would get a phone call, or someone would say, hey, I have to go call somebody. And then like the next scene, something else happens, or somebody has to drive somewhere, and they get there in like 5 minutes. Like they kind of
Gotcha.
they took liberties, like, okay, maybe a commercial break is enough to make you feel like you get to there. But when I watch it, I wasn't watching it with commercial breaks.
Yeah.
And so it's like the guy got
It's
there in 2
unrealistic.
minutes.
Yeah, it's unrealistic what time frame they're putting in different circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that kind of took away, like, there's no way that could have happened at that time. But it was frustrating. It didn't have the
I would just, these are easy writing. Every time that they need to go to a commercial break, you just have somebody go, I have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
There you
Hold,
go.
please.
Perfect amount of time for commercial break.
And then you watch people taking calls. CTU.
He walks in the bathroom and then walks out of the bathroom.
CTU, how can I help you?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah. No, but I'm disappointed. I'm not. I want them not to do it. If they're going to do it, bring in a new writing crew.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. Kind of disappointed. If I had to give this thing a 0 to 10 rating, just kind of overall, 6.5.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that's where I'd be at.
We've talked a lot about 24, so we've got some big ones coming up, so we'll move through these ones maybe a little quicker. But.
Right. So this next one I want to talk about, I won't spend that much time on it, but this show does 24 better than 24 does 24.
Yeah.
This is Designated Survivor. I'm actually caught up. I watched the show with my wife, and it's more engaging. You care for the characters and the story a lot more than
what's the
24.
what's the basic premise there?
It's really interesting, and this is what I'd say. The first episode gets you hooked.
Yeah.
Really well, because I was watching it with my wife and I was like, wow, this is crazy. What would happen?
Yeah.
So basically what happens is the whole Capitol building during a State of Union address gets blown up. So everybody dies in the government except for Kiefer Sutherland's character.
Which I was going to say, there's a tie-in.
Right.
There's a reason maybe why 24 is, transferred to Designated Survivor.
So he's a Designated Survivor, which means that there's no government left, so he becomes the president.
He's the government.
He's like rushed out of this room, like security. They're like, "Sir, you're now the president," and his wife is sitting there like he's like in pajamas and a hoodie, and they're like swearing him in. And I was looking at my like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so the first episode does a really good job at kind of bringing on. The second episode does too. It's not an action driven show though. It's more political. It's good. So it's kind of like all the political side of 24 with not really much action, which is okay. You just kind of have to kind of keep that in your mind.
Yep.
Going into it, so you're not expecting action-y elements all the time. While there is action elements, it's just not there a lot. But I do really like it. Kiefer Sutherland's really good, although I can't understand him sometimes when he's like whispering. I don't know what the deal is with that. I have issues with that, but it slows down a little bit. And I think it's just suffering from, being 20 plus episodes long in a season. Yeah. I think this show would be excellent if it were 12 to 13, maybe 14 episodes.
Gotcha.
But it's really effective. I like the characters. I'm really rooting for his like staff that he like hires on, that he has in the house with him. I want to pull up what's his name because I really like him. Kal Penn is in it. And he's like the Speaker of the House. Not Speaker of the House. He's what is he? Anyway, he's the guy who's the press secretary. He's the guy who basically talks to the press and like he's really good.
Gotcha. Which is funny because he actually, I believe, left acting for a little while to help in the Obama administration.
He left House. Yeah. And I liked him in House.
Yeah.
And he
got off.
He killed himself
in that show.
Yeah. He killed himself in that show.
Yeah.
It was kind of a bummer and a really sad point of that show, but yeah, he's in this. I like him. I liked him right away, basically, but some of the other ones I've had to warm up a little bit too. But as a whole, I really like this. In this most recent episode, they kind of break wide open this conspiracy recently the break
Illuminati?
Kind of. So that there's this conspiracy of this group of people that are anti-government and that have like they blew up the Capitol, have plans to blow up all these other things.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
What are the odds that
13.
I
don't know what you're talking about.
What are the odds that Designated Survivor is taking place in the same world as 24?
No, not in the same world. Because everybody would know that Tom Kirkman is not Jack Bauer.
If it's the future? Like Designated Survivor is the future.
No, because Jack Bauer is like
it's his twin brother.
Has been shunned by the government. Jack Bauer has been burned by the government bad.
Jack Bauer later on in life ran for president, and I'm just kidding with you. I'm just joking with you.
But hey, movie pitch.
There you go.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but so it's a good show to check out. You're saying it's pretty.
It's solid. It's not excellent, but it's decent.
It's
and I would,
better than 24.
Yes, it's a lot better than 24 Legacy.
Gotcha.
Not better than the original 24. It's better than 24 Legacy.
That's what I meant.
24 is still better than Designated Survivor, but I like Designated Survivor. Anyway, check it out. It's good. Cool. And to move on to the next one, actually, no, let me rate this last episode. And it's just actually I changed the page. Okay, so in this last episode, they find out there's like this whole. They find like this giant like warehouse full of bombs that they used to blow up the Capitol building.
Yep.
And Seth, who's Kal Penn's character, finds out that Leonard, who's this like really like kind of unrelenting press guy, is writing something. Found out the truth about the Capitol bombing and that it's not a terrorist group. It's that. So it was an internal job of sorts.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of freaking out about that a little bit, but it was good. I give it a 7.5, and not the best, but it's good show. Check it out. And diving into the next show I want to talk about is the limited series again.
The limited series
Prison
from
Break.
Netflix. Oh,
Prison Break.
You want to talk about Prison Break? All right.
Yeah. So
Go for it.
The thing with Prison Break is it's good, but not as great as the first season, and I'm waiting for it to get a little bit better.
Right. And we talked about this, so it's doing better comparatively than the 24 Legacy reboot.
Right.
The Prison Break reboot is, but it's still not great.
Right.
It's not as good.
Exactly. So
as the original Prison Break.
It's weird. The original Prison Break spent a lot of time on the details of how Michael was escaping from prison. There's an instance in this most recent episode where you see some of the details, but a lot of those details are glossed over for the sake of, I think trying to get him out sooner. Okay. Because it's only 9 episode season. So
that makes sense.
So
can't
like
cover as much.
Well, right. So like what was cool about the original Prison Break is he had a tattoo for every single element of how he needed to break out, which made it really cool, and it showcased how genius he was.
Yeah.
This one,
spoilers.
It seemed like he had some stuff.
Kidding.
And like some newer tattoos and some things that help him get out that were like, oh, that's kind of cool. But then they just kind of glossed over, like, how did he get out of here? How did he know that, the guards were going to be, not on the roof and those kinds of things.
Right.
In this last episode, he actually gets caught.
Oh, that's not normal, right?
Yeah. So he does a plan.
Yeah.
And they get out of the roof, like him and some other people. They get out and there's guards on the roof, and then he ends up getting caught and escorted away. Yeah. And so I don't know. So he actually gets put into solitary confinement, records like a goodbye video to his wife or his ex-wife, because he's not married to her anymore. But because everybody thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
But
as they would.
Yeah. So in past Prison Break shows, they would do something like that, and then they would do a twist and be like, "Oh, he did it on purpose because he's really genius."
Yeah.
They didn't do a twist like that at the end, so I'm curious to see if this really happened, or if this is the actual twist or not. As a show whole, I got to give this last one a 7.5 again as well. It's all right. I am intrigued. I'm curious, but it's still not as engaging as the original.
Yeah.
I feel like we're having a case of people trying to be as good, or shows trying to be as good as the original. It's just not happening for me. But that's it. That's really all I got it for Prison Break. But
awesome.
Next, Joel. This is the one that we've been waiting for.
This is the one.
This is the one that we've actually had a request for.
Yeah.
To watch, and honestly, I've seen it blow up in my news feed quite a bit on social media.
I read a news article the other day. It said it's the top tweeted show of 2017 so far.
I only watched the first 30 minutes.
Which doesn't surprise me. Well, that doesn't surprise me either.
Okay. I watched the first 30 minutes while I was on a treadmill.
There you go.
And Joel, you watched this whole thing, 13 episodes. And what is the name of the show?
13 Reasons Why.
All right, 13 Reasons Why. So
really
go ahead and
it's 13 episodes. For
break
13
this thing
reasons.
down for us.
Yeah, so 13 Reasons Why. The synopsis for this is it follows teenager Clay Jensen in a quest to uncover the story behind his classmate and crush Hannah in her decision to end her life. It stars a whole bunch of people. I think the one person that people would recognize the most is the main guy, Clay, who's Dylan Minnette. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
This could be all right.
Minnette. It's got a bunch of other people, though. It's got Catherine Langford as Hannah Baker, Christian Navarro as Tony, Alicia Bowe as Jessica, Brandon Flynn as Justin. You've got Justin as Bryce. It's like, all these guys and girls' first names. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's a huge cast for the show. It's a 13 episode thing. So you've got, Hannah's parents, and you've got Clay's parents. You've got all the parents of all the other kids for the most part. You've got teachers. You've got other students that kind of come in and out of the story. So this one is making a lot of big news and splash, particularly because of the elements that it deals with within the show. And so
right.
I'm going to try to treat this and talking about it very delicately
Sure.
because I do recognize that there is a lot of relatability to some of the experiences that people might have gone through in watching the show and in talking about some of these subjects. And so I'm going to do my best here also to not come across as obtuse, not come across as cold or shallow towards some of the emotional elements of the show, because it deals with rape, it deals with suicide, it deals with slander and sex, and a lot of really bad things happen in this show. And so I really don't want to just belittle any of that. If anybody's going through that or has gone through it or experienced it,
right?
Absolutely. So that's kind of my disclaimer here at the get-go.
That's good.
I will say this is a show that in approaching it, I really was not highly excited for and anticipatory for. This isn't my cup of tea. I'm not a huge fan of shows that deal in sort of teen drama and teen angst because it just feels very, most of the time, melodramatic. I think a lot of that is the idea that there's people at this age that are somehow going through experiences that are of such a big nature that it would warrant making a show out of. Because I don't know about you, Matt, but when I was in high school, I didn't enjoy it. Like, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but I didn't really enjoy it. I was kind of like enjoying the fact when I got out of it that I'm like moving on with my life.
Right.
But it wasn't like a horrible experience, but I also didn't have a ton of drama.
Right.
I definitely got teased at times. I definitely did teasing. I mean, there was dumb things that happened that I made decisions to do and other people did that affected me. But I will say this. This show does a really good job at presenting situations that feel very honest and feel very realistic and feel non-manipulated. And like if they were people that were of this age and going through this, in this modern era, these types of situations, that is probably how they would have faced it and approached it and experienced it. And because of that, it did not... The big fear, and again, because of types of show like this, is that it's going to fall into melodrama.
Right.
And that was kind of my big fear in watching it, is going to be so over the top, dramatic, and silly at times that it's just going to disconnect with me. And the show did not do that.
Okay.
The show did a very, very effective job of presenting it in such a way that was honest and real, that I was connected strongly to the story. That being said, the things that are being presented in the show at times are so bad and heavy that it was a really difficult show to watch.
Yeah.
And I wasn't enjoying watching the different elements that were being portrayed in the show. And that might be warranted. I mean, that might be what they were really trying to accomplish with it. It's based on a book, so there is some good depth there. It doesn't feel like the things that they're presenting are just shallow and they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. There was good character development. There was good, and I don't mean good as in like good things happen. I mean like just they did a good job developing the characters throughout the story. And some of them, I mean, the crazy thing is some of them go down this path and it's very realistic. They don't really seem to learn anything and their lives are worse by the end of the show. Some of them do learn things and their lives are better and they've kind of maybe grown a little bit personally. There's not a lot of that, but there's a little bit of that. And the ending to the show as well felt very honest. I don't know if they're going to make a season 2. They kind of left it open, but it felt very realistic as to like...
Really?
Yeah, it felt very realistic as to like, this is kind of probably how it would happen in real life, that these things would kind of come out. The whole purpose of the story is that this girl has made these 13 tapes, and I didn't really talk about the plot too much, but this girl, Hannah, has committed suicide, and this guy that really liked her receives this box of tapes, cassette tapes, which in and of itself was a little silly because it's like cassette tapes really, but it's just, it plays itself out. It's fine. And so, and the beginning of the story as well. And so he has to listen to these tapes and they explain the 13 reasons why she's committed suicide. Mm-hmm. I want to talk more about the suicide aspect of it in a little bit, but, when I first started watching the show, I really, the difficult time that I was having with it is I really did not like any of the characters. And it wasn't necessarily because they were poorly written. These are the kind of people that like, I wouldn't hang out with any of them. I wouldn't want to talk to any of them. Most of them were like very selfish, sarcastic, mean, manipulative. Right. Even Hannah herself, although she goes through some horrible stuff in this show, she's not the kind of person I would hang out to. She seems very like, and they talk about this in the show. I mean, she seems like she really wants attention and she's very big at times and she just kind of says things to people and doesn't really care how it comes across. She just kind of does things. And and so I think at times she also does pay for that. And not because it's warranted. Again, not because she like deserved that, but she does put herself out there. And so things happen to her. And again, I'm not blaming her because I want to be very clear. I'm not blaming her for anything that happened in this because people do things that are completely unwarranted to her and completely on them and very awful, horrible that they did to her. But at the same time, I didn't like a lot of the characters. I had a really hard time connecting with it. It took up to about the 5th episode till I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, I really want to see where some of these stories are going, where some of these characters are going. And I really am interested enough now in the story to want to see kind of how it ends. And it's like a train wreck. It's like she's going to kill herself. Bad things are going to happen. And really bad things, it gets progressively kind of darker and worse and harder to watch at times. And you really do feel bad for this girl. You really do feel like there was some really negative, awful things that happened to her. And it's very heavy.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to say that this is realistic, and I do want to touch on the suicide aspect in particular. I don't want to say, like, going back to my high school experience, 85 to 90% of my time in high school, you're sitting in a classroom, you're listening to a lecture, you're doing your homework. That's most of your high school experience. You're spending most of your time sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, bored out of your mind, going, oh, this is so tedious, this is so boring. And so I get why they didn't do that in the show, because you have to have interest, and you can't literally just show kids sitting in a classroom.
Right.
But it's presented in a way that there's like all this stuff that's happening, and it's just like boom, 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 bad thing, horrible thing, bad thing, horrible thing. Like all this stuff is just one after another, after another, and after another. And so it builds the tension. It needs to be that way, but it's also it's realistic in a television show sense, but it's not realistic in a real world sense. And I think you have to draw that parallel.
Right.
You really, really, really have to draw that parallel, because one of the big things that a lot of people are saying about the show, and I get it, is that in a way it could potentially glorify the idea of a person taking their life and committing suicide. And I can see that. And I get that idea, because it does end in a way, I'm going to try not to spoil too much here, but it does end in a way, in a sense that you do feel like Hannah, by killing herself, was able to accomplish a lot of things and make some changes that she wouldn't have if she had been alive. And it's a really difficult thing to set up in a person's mind. And I would also very strongly caution that if there is anybody out there that is struggling with, depression or thoughts of suicide, or has been through some really bad physical experiences or anything like that, this could be very difficult and could be very, I don't want to use the word necessarily triggering, but it could be triggering, and it could potentially put them in a very, I was impacted by this.
Wow.
And I haven't been through anywhere near the experiences that the people in the show have been. So you have to be very cognizant of that and very aware that this isn't going to be a show that's like, I feel super awesome about life and good things. So, be wary of that.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's kind of like a disclaimer that probably needs to be.
And I think for young audiences especially, it doesn't pull any punches. It shows people in the act of doing sexual assault up to rape, and, it shows suicide, somebody literally committing that. And so it doesn't pull any punches.
Right.
So you have to be very cognizant and aware of it. And so, okay. So in reviewing the show, we could spend probably a lot more time talking about this. I think the acting was good.
Okay.
Some of the characters did a great job. Some of them did an okay job. There wasn't any bad acting. The cinematography in particular, I really thought was good, really effective. One minor annoyance that I had personally is I didn't like at times, and this kind of tied into the whole way that I didn't like how it kind of glorified her taking her life.
Yeah.
Her tapes would tie into the real world and things that were happening live at the point of the real world. And I didn't like how it did that at the beginning. I got more used to it over the course of it, but at the beginning it felt very manipulative. Like she would say something on a tape and then it would just happen in the real world. And I didn't like how that was kind of at the beginning more manipulative. Later on, I think they did it much more effectively and better, because it was more like he had listened to a tape and then he would connect with a moment that was in the tape. Whereas before it was like he'd be listening to a tape and a moment in the real world would then connect to the tape. So it was fine with the two. There's two different ways of looking at that. So tonally, it was super straight, difficult to watch, but very effective at the whole mystery elements of, who's going to be. I kind of personally knew, it's hard to say, but I knew where it was going.
Okay.
I knew that. And all the things that I surmised would happen, it was very much apparent that it was going to go there. It was more shocking to me at times how far they would go to show those things.
Right.
Not that I wasn't expecting something to happen. Not that I wanted those things to happen.
Right.
So on a scale of, 1 to 10 or whatever you want to rate this, I would give it a B+. I would say that, again, though, strong disclaimer, don't tiptoe into this show thinking that it's just going to be a walk in the park.
I think the thing with this is it's heavy. Yeah, definitely viewer discretion advised. But I only watched 30 minutes and I was intrigued. The premise alone is enough mystery. If you'd be like, what?
I mean,
I there were things that I thought were charming. I thought the main character, I've only seen the first 30 minutes.
He
so
was
don't
the
judge
main.
me.
He was the only person I actually really liked.
Okay. So I mean, in the first 30 minutes, he dropped like 2 or 3 Star Wars references.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, I got more frustrated with him over the course of the show.
Okay.
But like at the beginning, he was like the only character I really liked and was interested. But then over the course of the show, I started to more connect with the other characters.
Okay, gotcha.
And the cool thing is it does a good job of not overly negativizing somebody. Like sometimes people did bad things, but they had a legitimate reason for it.
Okay.
And again, that's not to say that anything they did was right, any of the characters. But like, for example, one of the girls gets in a car crash, sort of, and breaks a sign, and her mindset is like, I just got to get out of here. I've been drinking. This is a really difficult situation, and so she flees the scene.
Just ditches it. And
I'm not saying that what she did was right, but it makes sense because she's very much scared that she's going to get in trouble, and at that age, that's very realistic. I hung out with people that would do something like that. They would knock the sign down on purpose. You kidding me?
Yeah.
But so I get it. Yeah.
Well, no, it's good to know. And thanks for taking one for the team and watching that.
All right, you're up next, Matt.
Yeah, hey, I am up next. Again,
I'm gonna find the hardest, worst show to watch. The most tragic show ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, we actually got a request to review that. So if you want to request something for us to maybe check out, if we're able to, we want to be able to do that so we can review it for you. So just email us.
Yeah.
Find us, message us somewhere. Again, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yes, sir.
Website realreviewmedia.com, realreviewmedia@gmail.com, and at Real Review Media, all those social medias. But other than that, anything else you got to add to this?
No, I think that's pretty much all I've got. I'm going to go take a bath, or I don't know.
Let's go watch Nickelodeon.
There you go. Watch some kitten videos.
Yeah. Kittens playing with a ball of yarn on YouTube.
Exactly, yeah.
Always cheer you up.
Yeah, absolutely. I need it now.
Anyways, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. That's been another episode of Tube Talk, and it's been real.
It's been real.